everybody, welcome back to Planet Coaster 2 and welcome back to Silver Sands. This is our worn down desert amusement park located just outside Palm Springs, California, surrounded by motels, roadside attractions, and the whole area is a bit of a mid-century fossil clinging on to the past amidst vast expanses of dusty desert. Today we are returning after a little bit of a break from the project. And as you can see from the intro cinematics, I've been quite busy, especially outside the park along the roadside, injecting life into the area. And I think at this point the park itself is more or less feature complete. I'll talk more about that once we get there. But yeah, let's take a little look around and I will show you what I've been up to. So I suppose we can start down at this end since we're here already. Coming along the road from this end, which we've not really done much of so far, I've got to give a huge shout out to Duct Tape Forum, who is building something in the park at the far end, which I'll be able to show off at a later date. But he's been in the file already and he's been providing me with some awesome little props and bits and bobs to really kind of add to the California-ness of it all. And that included this great little extreme heat caution sign, which I really like. But we've got those at the side of the road at either end of the main drag here. And then on the right here, we've got a little biker bar. This was one of the first things that I knew I definitely wanted to add to this project. And this is based on a reference, a place in California called Cook's Corner, which I found just while searching for, biker bars in California, basically. And of course, in this case, we've named it the Bandit's Den, just as a little nod to our buddy John, Masked Bandit. I do need to give a special shout out to Yohane for these Triumph Bonneville Bomber, or Bonneville Bobber. These Triumph motorbikes, which I mentioned in passing to him at some point, and then he just went away and made them, and they look absolutely amazing, absolutely fantastic, and they're obviously a huge part to selling the whole idea that this is a biker bar. It's crucially important to have bikes outside, actually, so that's what we've got. And then these dirt bikes are also made by Yohane, including, I'm sure I mentioned this in the first episode, maybe I didn't, but this bike here has been outside the motel since the first episode. So shout outs to Yohane, loving your work, mate. And it's a pretty simple structure, does not have an interior. I've sort of decided for the last few of these buildings outside the park I wasn't going to bother doing interiors because it's just a lot of time and effort for something that's not really meant to be the main focus of the whole thing, right? Like there's some things that I want to build interiors for and some things that are just on the edge. They're there. It's more sort of set dressing, and obviously I still need to square this up a bit. I think there's going to be one more building to the right here though, so I haven't completely decided how this is going to be joined up in that manner, so I've not done anything past here just yet. But that's the biker bar. Next door to that we have got we've got Fogg's Cactus Land, and he left me with the beginnings of a car park here, so I was thinking, well, it would be fun to sort of extend this car park off and then maybe have some kind of restaurant or something. It's part of the same car park complex. That's the sort of thing you often see. And this restaurant in particular is based on a reference for a chain that's local to California called Castaneda's, I think. And in our park here, we've just renamed it to Casa Patos. This is a little reference to Duct Tape Forum. Pato being Spanish for duck. And I wanted to work it in with the drive-through and everything, and I've been using Fogg's amazing trackitecture that he left me with to kind of build out all of these rounded curbs, and it's so useful. Like doing this with individual plaster block pieces or whatever would have taken so long, but when you can just build the whole curb piece out of track like that. And likewise for all these little bits here are also made of that same train track. And just made doing what would have been really arduous and boring kind of fun, actually, dare I say. Because normally building car parks and things I just find excruciatingly boring, but I actually really enjoyed making this as a result of how easy all this curbing and stuff came together. And then the other major thing with this, I guess, is that we've got little bits of grass. This is basically the only proper grass on the whole map. The area that Fogg left me with is this curated concrete. It looks quite sort of modern and urban, which is really cool in contrast to how sort of slapdash and rugged the rest of the kind of car parks are. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of carry that across and have it as though this whole little car park plot is a sort of fairly modern construction, or relatively modern compared to the sort of more mid-century vibes over here. And as a result, we've got this kind of curvy lawned area with the sprinkler, and it's just a little bit more curated, a little bit more modern than the rest of the stuff, and I think that's kind of a fun sort of contrast. That's the little restaurant area. I may add something else here at the backside of this car park. This little area would be serving multiple businesses, so maybe we'll add one more thing here, I don't know. And then we've just got this little kind of service road that's running out to this windmill over here. Not put too much work into that, to be honest, but again, it's like set dressing, you know, it's just there in the background to add to the vibes. I do also just want to shout out these new Bela Lugosi trucks that were added to the workshop recently. They are so good. I really love them. There's this red one and there's a green one as well. Yeah. And then on the other side of the road, we've got the overflow parking for the park. You know, this is what I was talking about in terms of contrast. On this side of the road, we've got this nice modern, I say modern, you know, we've got this kind of urban car park with curves and grass. And then on this side, we've got the kind of overflow parking for the amusement park, which is just a big dirt lot. As we come down this way, I've sort of finished off the car park as much as I want to finish off the car park. And I think I've said this before, but it's like these road markings, they don't make 100% sense. Like in real life, this would be different, I'm sure, but this is absolutely good enough for me. And this little diorama that I'm building, I'm perfectly happy with this. I don't need it to be 100% accurate, 100% perfect. I think it's fine. Yeah, the car park is the car park. And then for the guest spawn, I've basically added this sort of bus stop area here, or coach stop, shall we say. And we've got a nice Coyote coach here. Well, it's just pulled up, and that's where all the guests are spawning. At the far end of the car park here, I think this was possibly in place in the last episode, but I didn't talk about it. But yeah, we've just got this little rundown kind of liquor store. I saw a lot of these while I was walking around in Google Maps, and so it just seemed like an obvious fit for this area and for this park. And then this graphic on the side was specifically inspired by a separate reference image that I saw. And then again, on the theme of not doing interiors, this place is just completely shut down, boarded up, and the windows cracked, the signs falling apart. And I think this was duct tape for me. Added this little guy in the background here. I'm not 100% sure, but I certainly didn't put this here. But he's smoking, he's got the cigarette, and yeah, I love it. And then on the other side of the road here, we've got the luxury lanes at Silver Sands, the bowling alley. This does have an interior, but we're not going to look at it today. We're going to look at that at a later date, because there are very fun and exciting things happening inside here which deserve more attention. So we're going to delay that until a later date. All I can say is that it's going to be very cool. And then yeah, next to the bowling alley, we've got Sofa City. This is another derelict, abandoned big box shop. Obviously, they sold sofas. As you can see here, we've got a couple of abandoned pieces of stock, which perhaps the local coyotes are making their beds. To be honest, the main reason I built this is because I saw a reference image that had this really cool sort of diagonal wooden facade, and I wanted to do that. So I made this sort of diagonal wooden facade, and then I was like, well, what am I going to do with that? And out of the ether came Sofa City. And again, absolutely not having an interior in Sofa City. It's just a big box with an aircon on the top. And yeah, I'm dead chuffed with how that's come out. So then in the actual park proper, before we go down to the other end, I will just say I've added in this little warehouse down at this end. Again, really simple. It's just a box with a couple of doors on it. Up until now, the only storage that we've had for the park has been this tiny little shed over here. And I added another small one over here, which I'll show you in a bit, but I thought they should probably have some kind of slightly larger storage area, so I've given them this breeze block warehouse here. Yeah, I think that will do just fine. It doesn't need to be absolutely massive infrastructural project going on back here. We've got a little warehouse, we've got a plastic table with an ashtray on it, and we've got a skip full of rubble. The skip is also from the workshop. I will be sure to put a link to that in the description if that interests you. And then yeah, coming down the midway to the far end of the park, you may notice that the sightlines have changed a little bit here. I made an executive decision to remove the coaster that I had Kindly make for me. Hopefully Kindly, of all people, will understand this as a serial deleter themselves. Well, it was born out of a couple of things, really. First of all, I just had this little nagging thought in the back of my mind, which was partially prompted by community member Mr. Domez, who months ago messaged me after watching the first couple of episodes, saying that he really liked the project and that I shouldn't add any more stuff to it because it was just the right amount of jank, and he didn't think the park should get too big, be, too expensive looking. He thought it should look jankier and, you know, more crap, basically. And at the time I said to him, thanks very much, but there will be a larger coaster going into the project, because at that point I hadn't had the coaster from Kindley and added it into the file. When he said this, in the back of my mind I was thinking, I do kind of agree with you, but I also really like this coaster, and this was one of the first kind of ideas I had, and I was going to make it work. Basically, I was like, yeah, I really like this coaster. I think this is a good idea. Is it maybe slightly larger in scope than what this park would actually be? Maybe, I don't know. Obviously, you can excuse away anything and make anything work in this game. That's part of the fun. But I did have that nagging feeling in the back of my mind. And then I started Stevetown Northwest. And as I was starting to build that park, I just had this idea at some point. Maybe I could take that coaster that Kindley made for Silver Sands and put it in this park instead. Let me just load up Silver Sands and see what the park looks like if I take the coaster out and maybe replace it with a Ferris wheel instead or something. So I did that, and sure enough, I actually really like this new kind of vibe with the Ferris wheel and the drop tower, especially from the road. Ferris wheel is just such a classic part of an amusement park kind of skyline. It just looks correct. Yeah, I don't know. I don't need to over-explain this. Obviously, I am over-explaining it. But the coaster's being relocated to Stevetown. Kindley, I'm sorry. Thank you for the coaster. It will go to a new loving place. Let's just say Silver Sands, the check bounced. And now we've got a lovely Ferris wheel. So we have kept the Tilt-A-Whirl, which obviously just makes tons of sense for this park. And then next to the Tilt-A-Whirl, got to give a little shout out to Jash for putting me onto the reference for this. This is based on a food stand at Santa Cruz Boardwalk. Yeah, he sent it to me ages ago saying, oh, this would look really good in Silver Sands. And I was like, yes, you are absolutely correct. I am going to be building that. And sure enough, I did. Does have a little bit of a sort of partial interior here. Obviously, the seating is non-functional. This kind of large overhang with the speakers hanging off it, and then this really cool tile. It just fits perfectly with the mid-century theme and the vibe that we've got going here. These benches I nicked from Frozen Ice place that Nitro made me, so thank you Nitro for the benches. I wish they were functional. And then round the back of the food stand we've got this little dingy restroom area with a very simple toilet block and a couple of benches for smokers to come and hang out. I wish they were functional. Another little storage area. I'm not really sure about this. This looks a bit weird. I think it's because I need to... Maybe if I finish up this little nook here, it'll look a bit less weird. And then obviously there's a gate here out into the overflow car park. Also just need to give a bit of a shout out once again to Josh, the maker of all the arcade machines. He put up this pack of kind of vintage vending machines which work absolutely perfectly in this park, and I also just think it's kind of funny to have a cigarette vending machine in an amusement park, obviously directly opposite the smoking area. And then yeah, obviously we've got the big wheel, Ferris wheel. It's a Ferris wheel, fairly self-explanatory. Next to that we've got the drop tower. In my mind this would be probably the most recent addition, or along with the log flume it's like the most recent acquisition that the park's made, which is why it's right down at the end. Got this little kind of queue cover, pretty simple stuff. Possibly we should have this taller blue fencing all the way around, because this does seem a little bit sketchy that you would be able to just stand this close to it, but who am I to judge? You know, this is a janky amusement park in the middle of the desert. I managed to squeeze another little midway game in here, carrying the kind of roof structure vibe from the log flume across to this building as well, just to sort of, yeah, just to bring a bit of harmony to this area. And then we come down to the end of the park. I'm basically thinking the park is more or less feature complete at this point. Obviously there's lots of space left that I could add stuff to. As I was saying with Mr. Domez's whole point, it's kind of, I don't know, I think the park is a nice size right now. It doesn't feel too big or too small. It feels about right. And there are things I could put in this space, but what I'm thinking is I'm going to do what I did with Wet n Wild, where we call this the 1.0 version of the park, and then depending on what gets added to the game in the future, maybe we could expand, or we could remove and add new things in, or there's potential for expansions in the future, but I think for now this just feels like a sensible stopping point to me. And I've left this kind of service road, and at the end here we've got a little gate that just leads out into this kind of big dirt patch here. There are still like a few little bits and bobs I need to touch up, and I really need to do a whole pass across the whole park, just decals basically, you know, adding wear and tear and grunge and dust piles and sandiness. But yeah, in terms of rides and facilities, I think the park is more or less done. And I'm a dead chuff with it. And then, yeah, in terms of the project as a whole, as I say, this bowling alley interior is going to be very cool. Can't wait to show you that in the future. And then there's going to be something else down here. Duct Tape Forum's working on something really cool over here. And then I just need to finish off this housing estate at the end here. And that's going to be Silver Sands more or less finished, I think. That's going to be about it for today's update. Thank you as always for all the love and support on the videos. As you know, I very much appreciate it. I'll be back soon with another one. In the meantime, be good to each other, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!